Welcome back to Fantasy Football Today. It's time to give you the starts that you need for Week 17. It's the Fantasy Championship, and hopefully these players will deliver and deliver in a big way, and hopefully Tyler Allgeier will be one of those guys. He's our start of the week for Week 17, and that's not something I expected to say when the season started for a fifth-round running back who once upon a time was a linebacker in college, but he's been playing much better of late, outperforming Cordero Patterson, playing more than Cordero Patterson. Had a huge game against the Ravens of all teams, 15 PPR points last week, and then 22 PPR points the week before against the Saints. So he's doing a nice job of late, and now he's taking on a Cardinals team that is absolutely terrible. They've allowed 5 running backs in a row to get to 17 or more PPR points. For the season, 13 running backs have gotten to 15 PPR points or more. Hopefully, Allgeier continues to be a factor in the passing game, which was fun last week when he had 4 catches for 43 yards on 5 targets with Desmond Ridder in his second start. So maybe that's a connection that we can continue to build on. I don't have him ranked as high as I probably should. He's actually closer to 15 for me, but I'm expecting a big game for Tyler Allgeier. Seems like you guys have some optimism, not necessarily the same optimism. What's holding us back? Because this matchup is just so dreamy.
This is PPR scoring, and he had 5 targets last week. He had 4 targets in his 3 previous games. So that's the only thing. In non-PPR, you'd see him ranked up in the teens, I think, by all of us. The only concern is, does he have one of those games where he runs for 90 yards and doesn't catch a pass?
I actually am encouraged by the targets over his last 2 games. Those are the 2 games started by Desmond Ridder, so maybe there's an opportunity. I'm not going to say he's the next Austin Eckler, but maybe he gets 3 targets and he does okay there. But what I like about him is his yards after contact, and he's got a little bit of burst for a guy as big as he is. This is a pretty talented running back. The reason why I'm not ranking him higher is because Cordero Patterson's still there. Patterson could swipe a touchdown or a big play away from him, and I think they are going to run a lot on the Cardinals, so they could both be good. Allgeier's my favorite of the 2.
They both can certainly be good, but it's been the Allgeier show the last 2 games, which, again, trending in the right direction, as you said a couple weeks ago, and believe it or not. Could he be the starter for them and maybe a starter for fantasy managers in 2023? Other starts for me, Kirk Cousins, A.J. Dillon, Brian Robinson, Alan Lazard, who will kind of hinge on what happens with Christian Watson and Brandon Ayuk. Cousins has been on fire the last few weeks and hopefully will continue one more time. Now, this has not exactly been a place where he has had success, but it's really more about the Packers' defense. He did get 23 fantasy points against them in Week 1. Hopefully, the Packers continue to allow production to opposing quarterbacks as they have. 3 of the last 6 have gone over 23 points. But again, it's more about Cousins being at the point of the season that he's at, which is why I like him. I think obviously we all like him, as you see, consensus top 5 quarterback for us in Week 17. Brandon Ayuk is a little bit tougher to trust because we know Brock Purdy, A, not going to throw very much, and B, not throw downfield with a lot of success. But I like to look again at some of these end-of-season numbers. Now, they're probably playing next week because trying to lock up, if they can, the 2 seed in the NFC. He is 145 yards away from his first 1,000-yard season. They're talking about that. So anytime you start to hear things get said, I think they're going to try and get it done. Easy matchup to get it done against because the Raiders are so bad. So he's closer to a number 2 receiver for me. Seems like we're all kind of in a similar range. Dave, are you going to move him up at all? Or
no,
still
he's a flex. He's a flex. Last week he had 13 PPR points, and that was pretty good. He's not a factor when they get into the red zone. Purdy doesn't throw that much. The Raiders, they haven't allowed a 100-yard receiver all year long. If you're looking for him to get half of those 145 yards, I think he'll get that done for you. So maybe 12 PPR points, that's a flex.
Chunk plays I think we'll see in this game because
he had one last week. It was great.
The Raiders I just think are folding up the tents. So this is, I think, where the 49ers, you start them all if you have the ability to. Heath, let's talk about your starts here. You got Jared Goff, who's got top 5 upside, beat up the Bears last time these 2 teams met, and hopefully will play like he did last week, which was on the road. He's always been good at home. Tyler Allgeier's on your list as well. DJ Moore, Greg Dortch, and Cole Kmet. So the question we get on a week-to-week basis, is this the week you could trust DJ Moore? And you are saying yes.
The answer has basically been yes. Anytime Baker Mayfield has not taken the field for the Panthers and Baker Mayfield not eligible to take the field for the Panthers because he doesn't play for them anymore, he has averaged 14.5 PPR fantasy points in games that Baker Mayfield does not appear for the Panthers. That would make him wide receiver 19 on the season. Been much better than that in 3 of his last 4 games with at least 18 PPR fantasy points in 3 of his last 4.
Let's talk about Greg Dortch because last week was great. Can it be replicated, though, because we saw the 2 games prior to that very, very disappointing.
He has at least 15 PPR fantasy points in every game that he's played at least 70% of the snaps. It's just that Cliff Kingsbury has been yo-yoing his playing time all season long. We heard Cliff Kingsbury talk about Greg Dortch this week and about how he's earned more playing time with his performance against the Buccaneers. I'm going to trust that since he's said it, since they've spent the whole week talking about how good he was, since he's coming off a game with 10 catches for 98 yards, his role is secure. He's going to be a full-time player, and that's going to make him a starter.
His role is secure. I agree with you. And the fact that he's had at least 15 PPR points every time he's played 70% of the snaps, That's a good stat. And I feel like that's a little bit closer to a ceiling than I'd care to admit. It's Colt McCoy under center now, and he's had a good game with Colt McCoy before. But I think Colt McCoy will be able to actually complete passes to DeAndre Hopkins and Marquise Brown, which is something that Trace McSorley had a hard time doing last week. So I'm kind of lowering expectations a little bit on Dortch.
It's just that role has been great. He's higher for me than you see in the graphic. I think the fact, again, the other part of this, A.J. Green is banged up. So now it gives you the opportunity to keep Marquise Brown on the outside, keep Dortch on the inside, and Kingsbury talking about him as well. So much more excited about him than initially how I had it ranked. Cole Kmet is going to do what against the Lions? Similar to what he did last time against the Lions when he had 74 yards receiving, 2 touchdowns?
I think maybe just 1 touchdown. But other than that, I do think he is pretty close to a must-start tight end. In fact, I've got him top 5. He is a must-start tight end. This game has the highest over-under on the slate. Both teams are going to go up and down the field at will. The Bears do not have wide receivers. Cole Kmet's their number 1 option in the passing game, unless it's David Montgomery some weeks. And so I do think, despite his recent struggles, you'll see a big-time bounce back against a defense that's been absolutely awful against tight ends this year.
It's a great opportunity to buy back into somebody and just hopefully, A, we get a healthy Justin Fields, and B, he continues to look for him because really he doesn't have a lot of other options with Chase Claypool not producing and also banged up dealing with a knee injury. Dave, the starts for you got Mike White, Deontay Foreman, Cam Akers, Garrett Wilson, and Drake London. I think Cam Akers, we're all just kind of excited about this point, so great call by you to have him as a start. But Deontay Foreman's a little polarizing because you like him, Heath doesn't. Heath has him as a sit for this week, so let's have a Deontay Foreman conversation because he was very good last week. He was very good the first time these two teams met, but clearly this Bucs run defense is tough as well. So can he have another strong performance knowing that they're going to load up to stop the run?
Against that tough Bucs run defense, he had 15 carries for 118 yards. He even had 27 yards on 2 catches. Vita Vea played in the game for Tampa Bay. I am impressed with how the Panthers' run game has been. You saw it last week against what was supposed to be a really good Lions run defense, and they absolutely cracked them. That offensive line's been playing great, and I'm more convinced than ever that the Bucs won't pull away from Carolina in this game. That gives a good game script for Deontay Foreman to see at least 15 carries. When he's had at least 15 carries, he's delivered 110 or more rush yards 5 of 6 times. He's a number 2 running back across the board, much higher in non-PPR than full PPR because you can't count on him to catch a lot of passes.
Absolutely think he's a number 2 running back in non-PPR. In full PPR, he has 1 target since week 9. He has just done absolutely nothing in the passing game. And so that leads to these games interspersed. He has 130 yards one week, 24 the next. 113 one week, 9 the next. 165 one week. There's not any floor there for Deontay Foreman in PPR because of the lack of the targets.
I do also wonder, the first game, it was right after they traded McCaffrey, where the Bucs kind of sleepwalking through that, not expecting to see Foreman do what he did and Hubbard to do what he did. And Hubbard left that game early, and Hubbard's been playing a lot more lately. You talked about this earlier with Blackshear as well, that they're still having another guy factor in too. Mm-hmm. So Foreman to me is more of a flex. Clearly like him better in non-PPR than full PPR. I just think that they may have caught another team by surprise again last week. And the Bucs, I think, Vea is supposed to be returning for this game, could surprise them.
They're the same run defense with or without Vea, about 4.5 yards per carry with or without.
In Foreman's favor, I will say if you're stuck starting him or if he's in your flex spot, he does have huge upside. It's
tremendous.
He could give you 2 fantasy points, and it wouldn't be a surprise.
That's what happened against the Steelers a couple games ago, and so that was very frustrating, which is why we backed away from him last week, and then he comes out and had that huge game against the Detroit Lions, which, again, big surprise. Let's talk about the Jets, Dave. So Mike White and Garrett Wilson just buying back into both these guys, taking on the Seahawks.
White had 30 fantasy points against Chicago. He should have had 22 fantasy points against Minnesota. That's the range where I expect him in. I know the Seattle defense is good against the pass, but I think Mike White will throw enough in this game to make up for it and be worth a top 12 fantasy quarterback. And I love Garrett Wilson, especially when he's playing with Mike White. He's had at least 13 PPR points in each of the 3 games that White's played, 24 plus PPR points in 2 of the 3, so there's massive upside. Seattle's been great against wide receivers lately. I was really impressed with how they did against Kansas City, but they struggle in the middle of the field. That's where I think you're going to see Garrett Wilson attack them. The middle of the field, between the numbers, not necessarily near the end zones. I'm talking about away from the sideline. His numbers are better in that area. Mike White finds him in that area compared to the sideline. I'm good starting him as a top 15-ish type of wide receiver.
You said DJ Moore without Baker Mayfield. It's just Garrett Wilson without Zach
He's
Wilson.
even better,
It's just anytime Zach Wilson's been away. Joe Flacco, Mike White, Garrett Wilson's been awesome. He should be awesome once again. Drake London, you think he's got another big game this week against Cardinals?
I think he will. It's a great matchup, not just for the run game for Atlanta, but also against the pass. And the Cardinals, what are they known for? They don't want to give up the deep play. They don't mind giving up those short throws. That's all that Drake London's been getting. He's been doing his best Michael Pittman impersonation. And the 35% target share from Desmond Ridder in the last 2 weeks, awesome. He's actually had 7 catches, 74 yards in that range. Each of the last 3 weeks, fumbles have held him back a little bit. He'll have a chance to score on top of it as well. Number 2 fantasy wide receiver.
Yeah, my only concern with London is the fact that the Falcons, the other thing they're known for is they don't really want to throw if they don't have to. They've lost the last 3 games, and that's when we've seen the targets be up for Drake London. This Arizona team's bad. The run defense is awful. I could see a situation where they only throw the ball 20 times. Maybe it's 7 targets for London instead of the 9 to 12 we've seen recently.
Very fair point. I just think that, we've seen now it's 3 games without Kyle Pitts. He's been great in 3 of those games. He's been 2 of those games with Desmond Ridder. They've been good together.
Right.
And so Budda Baker not being there as well for the Cardinals, that
Helps.
shoulder injury certainly helps. And so good opportunity there for Drake London to be, I think, a number 2 fantasy receiver in Week 17.